Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Ron Wadley. Ron is the founder and owner of Sprocket Optimizations based in Dallas, Texas. Ron, thanks so much for joining the show.
Hey, I appreciate you letting me come on, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into the kind of the meat of this episode here, let's just do a quick intro on who you are and what you do.
So I own two different businesses. One is I do run an insurance agency here in the middle of Dallas-Fort Worth. The journey to learn how to market that business has led me to doing the Sprocket Optimizations, where we help other independent insurance agencies around the country focus on promoting their local brand, their local search brand, search engine optimization, and we do some pay-per-click with it as well. And it's, between the two of them, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, so talk about your transition into that marketing agency, because I know some people have similar stories, some people don't. I just always like to hear about how someone transitions from what they were doing first to now they're doing digital marketing. So talk about that a little bit.
So by education, I'm actually a math geek. I got a degree in math now a long time ago. And as I left the corporate world almost 11 years ago, you throw your baby in the stroller, you walk up and down the street, you don't know what else to do, you just knock on doors, you call, you talk to people in line for coffee, like whatever. And I looked around and went, this is really stupid. And said, there's got to be a better way. Being a crotchety Gen X guy, I'm always trying to find some sort of technology to make life easier and better. And got sucked into that world of digital marketing, first with Facebook ads back in the day when you could still use them like super effectively.
Without paying a fortune.
Yeah. I mean, we could run an ad on a weekend on a $25 budget and have 100 people to call on Monday morning. You can't do that anymore. But what happened is I evolved through that process. I got tired of all the dead ends, all the dead beats, and I said, what's a better way to do this? Had a marketing friend who introduced me to someone who was on an advisory board at Google and started talking about SEO. And when I sold my first insurance agency back in 2017 and started the one that we have and own today, I went full force down the path of SEO because I knew that it was a better way for me to attract people that I wanted to do business with, rather than maybe it was a good fit, maybe it wasn't. When you've got that voice that you're presenting the information in the way that you want to do it, it attracts the people that it resonates with. And so we've done that. We're now, my folks in my agency, they're generally working 100 plus prospects a month that are coming strictly from the SEO presence that we have.
Yeah, SEO is huge, man. I mean, my background's in SEO, so I'm excited to dive into this more with you. But what separates Sprocket, I guess, from the hundreds of other marketing agencies, if not thousands, that exist out there?
So for the local, especially independent insurance agency, most of those marketing agencies that you're going to talk to, they don't know insurance. I mean, let's be real. It's a screwed up marketplace. It's really tough. You're competing against billion-dollar budgets with those big companies, and you're trying to find some way to stand out. The cool thing for us is we've found a formula that works on that local search model that leverages the Google business listing along with the content, the stories you're telling on your website. Because that geography matters when people go to do search, that the metadata that's coming over from the Google business listing, it does affect the results you see. So if you've got the local stories about what's important and you can explain insurance well, that funnels people into that call to action at the end.
And that's genius, because I'm assuming you're templatizing this, because this is applicable for any city, any region in the United States, if not the world. So you would just templatize this strategy based on each individual city.
That's exactly right. And we do focus it on the specific market or niche that you're trying to attract. So we're in the middle of implementing an agency on the East Coast that's focused on church insurance. It's a little bit different than, say, home insurance in the middle of Texas, but we can explain the insurance, the commercial insurance that's applicable there in much the same way from that template that we have, and we change location names, we change to account for specifics of geography. If you're in Minnesota, you got to deal with snow on sidewalks. We don't deal with that here in Texas except for like 48 hours a year maybe. There's some nuance to it, but yeah, we are templatizing it and leveraging the AI to get us to be able to deploy it in an expedient fashion for those people.
Yeah, I love it. That's very interesting. So let's talk about local SEO now. You don't have to spill your secret sauce, but I'm just curious, what's moving the needle for you here in 2024 as things are always changing?
Honestly, the needle right now is the localized story. So I firmly believe in storytelling because all of us, no matter who we are, stories resonate. They pull on our heartstrings, they pull on our emotions, they allow us to visualize ourselves in that instance, in that circumstance. And then we go, what if we were in that? What would we do? And as the avalanche of information has befallen the internet with the onset of the large language models, people are just, they're vomiting keyword stuff, info out there that doesn't really make sense. So if you can tell a cohesive story about someone that lives close to where you are and how that product affected their life, that's how we're moving the needle in 2024.
So is this through GMB updates? Is this through social media? Is this through content marketing? Let's talk about that a little bit in more detail.
So it is content marketing. We always start on the website first. We spend the time and the energy to create the content that resonates with people and publish it on the website. From there, we recycle, reuse, repurpose, redeploy to Google Business Listing, to social channels, to Medium.com, I'm not a TikToker, but people do use it out there in that fashion. The key, and I learned this from a really smart guy several years ago, if you're going to expend the energy, if you're going to pay the money, if you're going to put the brain to it and you're going to create a piece of content and put it on your website, make sure you can use it in at least 4 different places.
Absolutely. Content distribution is huge, which is exactly what I'm doing in this podcast. Long form content,
Sure.
Throw it into Opus Clip, 15 pieces of short form content, which go on my website, go on my social media, or wherever else I want to distribute it. So
that's right.
That's the name of the game, man, for sure. One thing I've actually learned recently in local SEO, I don't know if you're familiar with, you know what citations are for sure, but I don't know if you're familiar with SEM Rush's local listing management.
Yes.
How you can build citations from there for an additional $20 a month on whatever plan you're on. I've actually found that moves the needle quite surprisingly in about a 2 to 3 week span once all these citation links have indexed. So talk about citations a little bit and if that's part of your strategy at all.
So we've been using Moz Local for those citations for several years.
Bright Local is another one too.
Yeah, and what happens is Google's looking for consistency in your information. So if you've got one citation that says one thing and another citation that says another, and your Google business listing says even another thing, you're not trustworthy. They don't know who to believe. And so that trustworthy is a big aspect, especially in the local search when you're providing that information to the people that are around you. The engines want to know that what you're doing is valid, it's authoritative, and it's trustworthy. That's a very simple, low-cost way to establish credibility and the trustworthiness.
Citations are huge. Plus, it's the backlink boost, too, that people don't think about.
Sure.
The other thing, too, I want to talk about is reviews. Everyone wants 5-star reviews on Google, but no one wants to put in the work to actually get those reviews, is what I've come to find out. What are some tips that you have on people to get those legitimate 5-star reviews?
Automate. If you're not automating it, you're missing out on tons of opportunity. The other thing is every time you talk to a person, especially after a sale, most customers, the happiest they will ever be with you is the moment of the sale. So if you, in that instance, while you're wrapping up that transaction, solicit for that review, that is an easy way because they've got that brief moment of euphoria because you haven't screwed anything up yet, right? Here's your opportunity to say, hey, can you do me a favor and just help me grow my business with leaving me a review on the Google Business Listing and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, there's a tool that one of my clients uses called Bird Eye. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's an automation thing where if someone, they send you a text, they click it, easy to leave a review just like that. It's like a $10 or $15 a month software that they just use. So, but that does move the needle. I mean, if you're doing stuff in volume like they are with water heaters and plumbing stuff,
oh, for sure,
leaving 5-star reviews, that moves the needle for sure. The other thing I've realized too with reviews, Ron, I'm curious to hear your take on this, is I think Google's placed a higher priority on, they need to know what's real. Most reviews are fake. It's not unknown to say that, right? So I think too, having images in the reviews, because Google can track if you're taking an image through your phone, they know where you're at, they know what you're doing, and then also too, adding copy the location in that review. So, hey, so-and-so just installed my water heater in Des Moines, Iowa. Putting Des Moines, Iowa in that 5-star Google review does a lot of wonders as well. So talk about that a little bit. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So it's also important to include the phrase water heater. Because if the person leaving the review just says, oh, great service, it's not relevant. But if they say, I had a great experience getting my water heater installed in Des Moines, Iowa, you're doing two things. You're playing to the geography piece of it, which is absolutely valid with the local search, but you're also mentioning the specific product. It's going to boost the credibility of it. It's also going to provide social proof for the person who comes behind and sees it. So it's got a double purpose there when you have that particular information in there. And you can prompt people to say it. Say, hey, I had a great experience moving my home insurance over to, XYZ insurance agency. And that will coincide with those services or those products that you have listed on your Google business listing, which is another enhancement.
Yeah, for sure. So let's transition to AI a little bit. I know you're big in AI. We were just talking about that offline before the show. How are you leveraging AI in Google My? Is it Google My Business? Is it optimizing the profile? Is it content creation? Talk about how you're using AI right now.
My primary use of it is in the content creation. I have had the good fortune to learn from some really smart people, and we have a formula that helps us create the content. So we're using a piece of software called Phrase that allows us to optimize. When they create the instructions, we actually rip those out in their process, and we put those into our own customized GPT prompt that goes into a GPT that I've customized for myself based off of how I sound and how we create content. And so we use that to get our first rough draft. It allows us to do more volume. It's not going to replace a marketer, but it's going to allow the marketer to be much more effective, and that's where we are. We then take the output of that back to Phrase actually, and leverage some of their tools, especially on the keyword optimization, while making it sound like a cohesive story. You can't just stuff keywords, but if you have useful content that is stuffed with keywords, which is where they come in, that's where we get a lot of bang for the buck.
Yeah, Phrase too, I believe they're using GPT in their outputs, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, so let me hear your thoughts on this too, Ron, because I feel like most AI SaaS tools, AI writing SaaS tools, are white label OpenAI. They're just pulling in an API key from OpenAI, creating a nice interface on the website, and then locking users into a $50 a month credit card auto renew, typical SaaS playbook, right? So I like what you're saying about using a custom GPT to add your brand voice to it too, and pulling the outputs from there. So what are your thoughts on something like that?
So most people make the mistake that they think that the output that comes from, whether it's the SaaS software, whether it's natively from GPT, they think that they don't have to do anything with it. Large language models are pattern replicators. They are taking the data that's been used to train them, they are looking for data patterns in it, and then they are using that as a replication in the output. And so if you do nothing with that output, if you're paying the $50 a month for whatever one of those shiny software tools is, and you just go back and publish that, you're screwed.
Which most people do.
That's what most people do. And that's part of the formula where we go back and we do our edits in Phrase, right? And we're making it sound like we said it. We're making it hang together from start to finish. We're making sure those words are in there, but we're not having to come up with the original 1,000 words to get the thing rolling. And that's the piece that I think most people screw up.
I agree, 1,000%. Are there any other AI tools that you're using?
I do use AI inside of Notion. to help me keep my life on track, because otherwise I'd be a hot mess. We also use it to construct emails that we're sending if we're trying to convey something specific. A lot of my folks will use what's now labeled as Google's Gemini, because it's part of our workspace, right? But they use it to help them come up with topics and ideas, research companies that we're trying to sell to. It can also be really beneficial if you're trying to research a content stream that you want to produce.
Where do you think AI is going here in 2024? What's the next big thing? Was it OpenAI Sora with the AI text-to-video model? I'm curious to hear where you think AI is going in the near future.
Well, I read something this morning, and I think it makes a ton of sense. So moving away from large language models to small language models. And what does that mean for a business? If you have internal intellectual property, you have expertise, you have guidelines that you have to adhere to from various sources, whether that be regulatory, whether that be the product that you're buying and then subsequently selling, putting that into an internal container so that you can do multiple things. You want to be able to communicate back to a customer without an actual person. Well, here's everything that bot needs to know. If one of your employees has a question, can they find the answer to that for themselves? And it's going to be less about the creativity and more about the functionality of streamlining, optimizing, and maximizing your business.
I agree with you. So you're saying we're going to see a trend more on focusing on internal data versus using the external data that are currently is being scraped by OpenAI, Google, Microsoft for their large language models.
I think that's where, especially on a local business, small business, your corporate people, they're playing with different rules just because of budgets. But for people like you and I who are running, local businesses to the people around us, that's how we can maximize what we do for them while also maintaining great profitability.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. So I want to transition to something a little different here, Juan. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all. What are some marketing tricks or gimmicks that you see in your industry? It could be insurance, it could be SEO. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
The gimmick that chaps my hide the most is the cold email marketer that says, if you don't want to hear from me again, hit reply. They're trying to game open and reply rates, and they're violating not having an unsubscribe mechanism, and it pisses me off. I actually have started marking all those emails as spam, because that's what it is, and they need to be punished for really poor marketing techniques, and they're simply doing it to try to game the system, and it sucks.
On the CRMs, you mean?
Yeah.
100%. Same thing with LinkedIn cold outreach too. It's kind of the same deal. It's just I'm so sick of that stuff too. And now with AI, it's even worse because
it is.
Just automate it.
Yeah, it's completely automated. And fortunately, LinkedIn has created the spam box in their messaging platform, and it's become much more useful. But you're seeing, especially around the world, as the technology gets cheaper, you're seeing lots of people from lots of places trying to deploy it and use it. And when somebody says, I'm going to put 100 leads into your insurance agency, I get that message all the time, right? They're so full of crap. And they've done no research on who I am, what I do, how we do it, any of that stuff. They have no idea what we need. And I get that all the time through LinkedIn and Facebook. And that's
also based on the false assumption that all leads are created equal.
Oh,
I do high ticket lead gen, and I can't tell you how many people we have in prospect or discovery calls, more leads, and it's like, what about the quality of leads? Have you ever thought about the quality of leads? And it's like they don't think about that. They just think as leads as apples to apples.
Yeah, and most people don't understand the difference between a lead and a prospect. And that's a huge step for most folks.
SQLs, MQLs, and qualifying and nurturing those leads.
That's right. And just because you have a name and a phone number or a name and an email address doesn't mean they're going to buy from you. And
you mentioned...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to make
I would say oftentimes you see people with a really terrible sales process and follow-up process, and they think the answer is more leads, and they're leaving all of this money on the table simply because they suck at follow-up.
Yeah, suck at close rate. I deal with that all the time. We give leads to the inbound salespeople, and they don't know how to close, but guess whose fault it is, Ron?
Yeah, you gave them a bad lead. Come on, Ryan.
Yeah. I run into that issue all the time. You mentioned email really quickly. I want to get your thoughts on email marketing. Are you leveraging email marketing in all in what you do?
So we do. We are not doing a ton of cold email marketing. Most all of our email is warm. It is follow-up. It is re-engagement. I do, on the Sprocket side, have a list that is growing constantly, and I have a podcast that drops knowledge, short snippets, Monday through Friday. And I provide those folks that are on that email list that are subscribers a summary of what we talked about each week, how you can deploy it. Here's a cheat sheet to help you do it and keep you engaged that way, to keep them warm, to keep them rolling, so that the idea is eventually they'll buy from us. And we do include the call to action that gives them options on ways to interact. But we are not dependent upon the cold email marketing, because I hate getting it myself. It just ticks me off.
Yep. And they got it unethically too, probably from an unethical source or an unethical method. Email marketing is not dead. I hate when people say that. I hate when people say that. The money is always in the list. Any good marketer understands that. And especially in the age of AI and SEO, and when you're dealing with all these algorithm updates and rented traffic, you really have to own your traffic to succeed in 2024 and beyond, as the CPA and the difficulty is only going to get higher and higher to try to capture high-quality leads.
Well, yeah, as you look at, so SEO is changing, right? I mean, we're now talking about the generative search experience. And so how we rent that traffic is going to change. But if you own the email address, A, you can contact them directly. B, you can create them into a custom audience to serve ads to. And C, they can never escape you if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, you own them. End of the day, you own that traffic.
Until they change email addresses, and everybody's got 47 email addresses. But you have the ability to chase them and engage them in meaningful ways, and you're not dependent upon what comes next, whether it's how we do search, how we're serving ads. I mean, there's certain principles that are always going to matter. Tactics will change, principles don't, and having that email address is a core part of the principles.
Agree 1,000%. I want to hear your quick thoughts now on SGE, and where do you think Google's going with all these algorithm updates lately? I know the March core update was a big one. It affected a couple of my sites pretty good, so I want to hear your thoughts.
So the latest updates have been good for me. I'm not going to lie. We're still rocking and rolling. We're pushing bigger traffic every month over month. What I think they're trying to do is they're trying to set themselves up to make sure that they can squash perplexity. Right? Like that's who's got the best SGE right now. And they've got 25 years worth of data, and they've got it all indexed and cataloged so that it can spit things back. I really think the citations, we started with citations on the local level. The citations that come through the generative results are where the money's going to be made in the future. So having that high authority now is going to pay massive dividends later.
I'm very bullish on local SEO too. I've never been more bullish on local SEO. National SEO is, I guess, what I was hinting at in that question. I think national SEO is in trouble. A lot of niches are in trouble, to be honest with you.
Oh, for sure.
You look at what they've done with forums and how Reddit's traffic has increased 500% plus to the moon. Well, how convenient they have a $60 million contract with Reddit now to use their data to train their AI models. And you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
Reddit went public. They IPO on the stock market about a month ago. There's just corruption all over this. And I've been talking about this on several videos. No one wants to talk about it for obvious reasons. Where do you think this is going, Ron, with how they're just prioritizing all this UGC, which who knows if it's actually real people anymore in these forums, right? And then they're also favoring parasite SEO too. So what are your thoughts on where everything's going now?
Well, I think the local niche stuff is really the key to the whole thing.
I agree with you.
You need to be able to speak directly to an audience. You need to understand that audience. You need to understand, let's go all the way back to Gene Schwartz, right? Mass desire of your market. What is that? What is your market? The local market is key, because the results that are going to come through the chatbot, eventually Google's going to use that same mechanism that they do with local search today on the search engine result page, they're going to apply it to those generative results with the bots. And that's where, if you own your local marketplace, if you've got all of those, like whether it's Ankeny, whether it's Des Moines, whether it's Ames, if you've got those places that are in your content and Google's seeing all those interactions, and you've got the authority, you're going to win those citations. And the citations, Google's going to make money from helping people make clicks there, right? That's where it's going to absolutely win the day.
Yep. So creating a moat, long story short.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you truly create the moat, but you definitely get your boat in the moat, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Ron, this has been fun. Are there any final notes that you have for people listening, whether it's local SEO tips, Google My Business, SEO in general, just any final notes you have for the audience?
I was having a conversation with my wife last weekend, and she runs a local business here in DFW as well. And we were talking about the process of creating content. She's been working with a coach who's been trying to push her down a couple of different paths. She's not comfortable there. That's not her style. It's not her personality. It's not how she connects with her audience today. And what I told her is that the method that you use to create the content originally matters way less than that you actually did it. People get enamored with shiny objects and new ways to do things, and I've got this new social platform. Like they pop up like 3 times a day. I don't keep up with all of them. The key is that you're actively, consistently doing the things every single day. And when people realize that and they deploy that in their life, they get better at what they do. So the content that you produce gets better. And then you learn the tricks to move it around the web into as many places as possible. That's how you succeed.
Content creation.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah,
I agree with
absolutely.
you. Well, cool. Where can people find you online?
So I'm easily found on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, just as Ron Wadley. I'm bald. A lot of people call me Uncle Ron. I do have the podcast that drops Monday to Friday called Uncle Ron's Porch. That can be found at uncleronsporch.sprocketops.com. And then Sprocket Expert Optimizations is found at sprocketops.com. Hit the contact form. Let me know what you want to talk about, how we can be helpful. And, I just try to make people's lives better.
Yeah, and I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. Give you a little backlink juice, too, on all those sites. So thanks again, Ron, and thanks again to everyone listening to this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again next time.